Hi, everyone. After doing the show last night on UNRWA and Israel reporting that 12 UNRWA employees were present on October 7th participating in the murders and kidnappings of Israeli citizens, and in response to that, 11 nations so far defunding, I decided maybe it would be good if we did just go back in and look at that issue specifically as to what UNRWA teaches. I did a short portion of that video showing you some of their curriculum, and I thought it would actually be really worthwhile to go back and look at that in a little bit more detail, especially as I'm continuing to see basically the pity parties that these nations are pulling funding from the biggest aid organization in Gaza, and this is going to be a problem for civilians, and this is collective punishment, and all of these arguments. I want you all to really know what UNRWA has been teaching, because I think as you see it, you're going to get really behind. If you're not already, you'll get behind pulling the tax dollars from this organization. So just to kind of recap who UNRWA is, they are the UN organization that is designated to specifically meet the needs, the humanitarian needs, supposedly, of the Palestinian refugees. And what's interesting about them is that there is another organization that does the same thing for refugees overall. And we spoke about this a little bit in the previous video. They are, let me see, UNHCR, the UN High Commission for Refugees. Okay, so the UNHCR, they care for refugees all over the world of every nationality. And the Palestinian people are the only group that have an organization, an agency that's specified just for them. Of all refugees in the world, they're the only ones that get this special treatment. They also have special laws that apply to them and not other refugees. So, for example, and I spoke to this some in the previous video as well. For example, other refugee populations, that first generation is considered a refugee, and then subsequent generations integrate into the culture of the nations where their parents or grandparents sought asylum, and they're no longer considered refugees. But with the Palestinians, every subsequent generation is considered a refugee. They're the only people group that has this application of the law. So again, they're super special in the world of international law and the UN. They're very special people. So UNRWA is their specific organization, and they do mostly education and healthcare. Education is one of the biggest parts of their budget. Let's see, I wrote down what that percentage was. It's 58% of their budget. And they run 183 schools in Gaza. So they have over 286,000 students. Now, they're not just in Gaza. They are in Gaza, in the West Bank, which is biblical Judea and Samaria, and they are in Jordan, East Jerusalem, Syria, Egypt, Lebanon. So that's all the area, anywhere where there's Palestinian refugees in the Middle East, they are present as well, working and operating. So we're going to specifically talk about the curriculum that they use. And on their website, they state that they use the curriculum of their host nation. So that means that in Gaza, they are using the Palestinian Authority's curriculum. But they do also create their own curriculums, and you can know which curriculum they created because it has their UNRWA logo on it. So they're using the Palestinian Authority curriculum in correlation with supplemental materials that they're generating. So we're going to look at some documentation from an organization called Impact SE. And they are set up specifically to go in and look at curriculums in the Middle East and see how they are aligning with UNESCO values. And it's sort of basically a watchdog organization for education in the Middle East. And they also worked in correlation with UNWatch.org, which is another watchdog organization specific to the UN. And in the sake of fairness, they actually did, and when they did their evaluations on the UN or UNRWA's curriculum, and they do this periodically, like every time a new curriculum is released, they will go back and review it, both for UNRWA and also for the Palestinian Authority. So they did sit down at the last release and talk with the chairman of UNRWA about their findings. And the report was that they, in response, the UNRWA organization decided to distance themselves from the curriculum by emphasizing that they use the curriculum of their host nation, and by saying that anything that had their logo on it must have been used without their permission. But the problem with that is that the people who signed off on all of the curriculum, even those that have the UNRWA logo that they said, was fake, are documented UNRWA employees. So there's a problem here all around. Okay, so I don't know if some of you are familiar with Israel's Prime Minister Golda Meir. She has a really famous quote that is, "There will be peace in the Middle East only when the Arabs love their children more than they hate Israel." And that's something that the Arab population obviously is going to push back on, because you're going to have Arab moms who are like, no, we really love our children. And I believe that. I believe the Arab moms do love their children. But when you see what I'm going to show you today that they're being taught in their schools, Golda Meir's quote is going to make a lot more sense, just in a very evidential way. Just that it's really hard, honestly. Like it's kind of painful. It was painful for me to go through and look at and think about, just as a mom, to think about children being taught what they're being taught and the way that they're being taught. I mean, it's just totally indoctrination. So let's start out with, let me just look at which one I want to start out with. Okay, we'll start out with the one that I showed you all yesterday. And we'll just go through a few points there. Which one was it? UNRWA, education, textbooks, and terror. Here we go. Okay. I have in the show notes, I have the links for all of these documents if you would like to look at them a little bit more extensively for yourself. And of course, yesterday's video, this is the one that we went through in part. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this specific one, but I did want to show you a few things again, and maybe a few new things. So we'll just look at the table of contents real quick. Let me just make sure. Okay. I'm just always nervous that I'm not doing it right. Okay, so the table of contents, we have introduction, background. They explain their methodology and the research that they undertook and how they met with UNRWA. Okay, part 1, UNRWA staff celebrate Hamas massacre. Part 2, UNRWA graduates from textbooks to terrorism. Part 3, textbooks used in the UNRWA schools, and then it covers. So we're mostly just going to look at a few things from parts 1 and 2, and then we're going to actually look at another document that I think covers part 3 better. So let's see, part 1. Where did I want to start? Okay. It's page 10. So let's go to page 10 real quick. All right. UNRWA staff celebrate Hamas massacre. Okay. We looked at a few of these yesterday, in the previous video. This is one that we looked at. I also made another video, was it 2 weeks ago? I think it was, showing the teachers in the UNRWA Telegram group celebrating what happened on October 7th. Okay, but there's a few specific people I wanted to show you. Let's see. Okay, yeah, so this lady, she's celebrating, these are teachers, okay, celebrating the firing of machine guns at civilians. Okay, and these are their Facebook posts. And then number 3. Okay, this guy, yeah, we talked about him supplicating God to destroy the Jews and their supporters. Okay, so he's teaching children, right? So we talked about these people yesterday. Okay, so the Hamas massacre is the first real victory on the way to liberating all of Palestine, right? This is on their Facebook, this guy, the teacher's Facebook. Okay, so let's go to page 45 now. I think that's where I need to start next. Okay, yeah, all right. This is their wonderful crop of graduates, alumni of the UNRWA education system. All right, so we have here Amir Yasser Nazmi Saada. Okay, his diploma, it was found in the vehicle of a car that was used in the October 7th attacks. Okay, now the guys, the 12 that we know for sure that were in the attacks, the evidence that Israel has for that was from their cell phones and other video footage that they live streamed. So they were matching people who were actually there on camera. Also from interrogations from other terrorists that they captured. So the evidence that they have there is pretty undeniable and irrefutable. It's very clear that these people were participating in the events of October 7th. Okay, so let's get back to our document. Okay, so yeah, here's another one. Let's see what it says. He says, he has a quote here. He wished since childhood to carry a gun one day to fight the enemies of God. Yeah, so these are their students. There's a few that I thought I might show you. Let's see, page 98. I mean, yeah, 98. Let's see what's there. Okay. Okay, so this was just a few things about the school. They actually had in their textbook links to the October 7th attack. So this document was compiled in November of 2023, so after October 7th took place. And they found this on one of the terrorists, and the quote was used in one of the school books, and it's referring to a terrorist named Khalid Ibn al-Walid. I'm sorry, my Arabic is not very good. So it's a quote by this terrorist, and it's actually it's encouraging them to behead and remove the hearts and livers of Israelis. And the students, it says here, the students in UNRWA schools learn that al-Walid is a hero of Jihad and is glorified in grade 5 Arabic reading comprehension. So in 5th grade, they're reading about this this particular terrorist and reading his quote, right? And it was found on the body of a Hamas terrorist from October 7th. So, you know, they're clearly being indoctrinated and taking this with them into adulthood, okay? And I wanted to point this one out too from this document about women. Okay, so I think what's specific about this, and this shows up in several of the other documents, but I thought this particular document explained it very well, that in Islam, which is a very patriarchal system in religion, women are not considered equal with men, and they're very subject to men, except for in the area of terrorism. In that case, in martyrdom and terrorism, for the sake of jihad, they are actually equivalent. And so if you're just going to think through this, like I'm just thinking through this as a woman, if you're very much subjugated in your society and you're being told that you can have an equal standing with men through this act of jihad, um, and being a martyr, um, I think that could be a very deceptive and vulnerable teaching for the women, for the girls to absorb, and it's right here in their textbook. Okay, so that was the one that we went through yesterday a little bit, and so there's just a few points I wanted to pull from that. There's another one that they did. Let's see, this one's red. I called this one the red one in my notes. There it is. Okay, let me set it up. I appreciate you all being patient with the technology. Okay, here we go. Okay. All right. UNRWA education, reform or regression. All right, so this one I wanted to show you, it also does the same thing where it goes through and it shows a number of teachers. You look at the contents and you can see what's present, but they go through and they do show you a number of teachers and other employees for UNRWA, and not just, this time it's not just in Gaza, this one is broader. It's showing the employees and the staff in all of the areas where UNRWA operates, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Jordan, in East Jerusalem, and the West Bank, which is Judea and Samaria. I prefer to call it Judea and Samaria personally. So they do the same where they just go through and they show documentation of the teaching staff praising, like this is a Syrian teacher praising Hamas. And then they get to this one lady. I'll just call her Hitler lady. Page 22. Here we go. Here's Hitler lady. All right. It doesn't say here exactly what she does, but she works for the organization. And if you look over here on her social media, she says Hitler should burn more people. Okay. It sounds like she has really good character, and she's the kind of person who should be working with children and refugees and doing humanitarian aid. I'm being really sarcastic. I just want to make that clear. Yeah, like Hitler should burn more people. Okay. The UN should not be hiring anyone who would say that on their social media, or even in private for that matter. But the fact that they have someone on staff that says this is extremely problematic. I'm not sure if she's still on staff. I don't know what happened, but she was on staff. I don't know if she was released. The document doesn't say, to my knowledge. But yeah, this is the kind of people UNRWA is hiring. So yeah, good quality, good quality people here. And this document just continues on in the same format as some of the others, where it goes on to show the curriculum being taught in the schools And I think it's a little bit challenging. This one I just feels a little bit more challenging to read through. So the quality of the content here is the same, but I just think that this next report I'm going to show you is a lot easier to look at. Okay, so stop sharing. While I'm setting up the next one, I do just want to remind you guys that it is extremely helpful to me if you go over to YouTube and interact with my content there. It does make sure that it makes the algorithms. And I actually had a friend from Goldsboro, North Carolina, where I'm originally from. He sent me, he was one of my teachers, and he sent me a message and said, you might get a lot of subscribers. And it was really funny because I was watching the subscriber number that day, and it had stayed the same for like 2 or 3 days. And then suddenly it was up by like 12 people. But he said that he had actually sent one of my videos to one of his church, like his church group chat. And so a lot of people from his church joined that way. So if there's ways that you can share, it would be really helpful for me. And it just helps get more pro-Israel content out there on social media. Okay, so let's look at this other report. Okay. All right, so this one is where they actually go through the Palestinian Authority's curriculum in detail. And of course, this is the curriculum that UNRWA uses. All right, so they have the Palestinian Authority has 222 textbooks available online, and they were able to access the books via the learning portal. Now, in 2000, before the year 2000, the Palestinian curriculum in the West Bank and East Jerusalem was, well, there are some schools in East Jerusalem that are Israeli schools, but the ones that were Palestinian schools in East Jerusalem and the West Bank were using Jordanian curriculum, and Gaza was actually using Egyptian curriculum. When Israel signed the Oslo Accords and the PA signed the Oslo Accords, then the PA started creating their own curriculum at that point. And my understanding is that it was extremely radicalized up until 2016, and then it made a few improvements. And then in 2017, it started going, or the 2016 curriculum, or sorry, it was until 2016, it was very radicalized. 2017 curriculum made some improvements, and then it went backwards again for this particular 2020-2021 curriculum, which is what they're still currently using. Okay, so there's a lot to go through in this. All right. I'll just start out with page 4. All right, so they have, at the beginning of the document, they explain in brief what their findings were, like in terms of the rejection of peace, none of the curriculum, and they're looking at all grades here, from primary school up until grade 12. And they all leave out the historical information about the peace negotiations throughout history. They also do not recognize or acknowledge Israel and its establishment, and the name of Israel doesn't appear on any maps. That one's not surprising to me. I've actually seen their maps, and of course they don't recognize Israel. So other historic events like the Jewish revolt of Bar Kokhba in Jerusalem, that's not something that they recognize either. Okay, so I want to start out with anti-Semitism, what they say about anti-Semitism on page 13 here. Okay, yeah, so they promote basic anti-Semitic tropes that the Palestinian history books they teach that the Jews control the world. The whole like Zionist New World Order stuff. Like they teach that. They teach the Jews control money, media, politics, and use them for their own benefit. Just basic anti-Semitic tropes. And of course, they reject peace and a two-state solution. And then, of course, there's massive encouragement of martyrdom and jihad, which I think is the sad part. And violence is inserted into science and math. Okay, I just want to talk to you for a second. All right, I know that a lot of you in the United States have pulled your kids from public schools in your homeschooling, and you're doing that because of the way, in part, I mean, I know there's many reasons, but in part because of the way that critical race theory has entered into the public education system. And I know most of you are really informed on this. Most of my understanding of it, I have got from Krista Bontrager and Monique Duson, their podcast at the Center of Biblical Unity and Theology Mom. And I've learned from them that, this isn't, this is a worldview. I mean, it started out as a legal construct, but it's a worldview. And so the way that it's happening is that they're taking that worldview and they're inserting it into curriculum in very unusual ways, right? So they have documentation on that. And I know you all are informed parents, so many of you are aware of just how that is happening. So basically what's happening with Palestinian authorities curriculum is the same, except it's like what's happening in America injected with a massive dose of steroids. Okay, so they're taking concepts of jihad and they're weaving it into math problems and science and all throughout. So it's not just in the history where they're studying history and they're doing historic revisionism. They're weaving it throughout the entirety of the curriculum that they're teaching. And it's actually really sad, and sometimes it's like disgusting the way that it's happening. It's just quite, it's really abrasive. Like it's overt. It's not even like happening in a subtle way. So that's what's going on with their math. I switch my tabs real quick. Okay. Okay, so we're going to look at some specific examples of this. I'm going to change this to page 21 here. Okay, so here's an example of the anti-Semitism that they were talking about. This is an 11th grade textbook, and it's history. It says an 11th grade Palestinian history textbook implies that Jews control the world using classic anti-Semitic imagery of an arm with the Star of David holding a globe. The caption reads, "Cultural colonialism, the most dangerous type of colonialism because it attacks the spirit of the nation, its beliefs." Okay, the same page, they have some information about science. So the grade 7. Newton's second law is exemplified by an image of a masked Palestinian boy aiming a slingshot at approaching soldiers. Students are asked, what are the forces that influence the object after its release from the branch, which is a slingshot, in the coil? Okay, look at this image here. So we have the IDF and we have a terrorist fighting the IDF in a 7th grade book, talking about Newton's second law. Right? I mean, if I was a parent, I would just be irate. Would you not? Okay, let's look at page 24. I'm going to scroll down. 3. Okay. This one's about suicide bombings. 8th grade, Arabic language. This is, their language class. Reading comprehension is taught through a violent story promoting suicide bombings and exalting Palestinian militants in the Battle of Karmeh as they cut the necks of enemy soldiers and wore explosive belts, turning their bodies into fire burning the Zionist tank. Wow. Israeli forces are described as leaving behind some of the bodies and body parts to become food for wild animals on land and birds of prey in the sky. An accompanying illustration at the beginning of the story depicts Israeli soldiers in a tank shot dead by a Palestinian gunman. All right, this is 8th grade. I have an 8th grader. I just can't imagine. We have done everything we can to make sure that they have limited exposure to what's happening. And I'll say, too, the Israeli government has really encouraged parents to make sure to safeguard phones and other technology that the kids might have access to. It's been the heart of our nation not to let our children see this. And not only that, but there's a website, Saturday-October-7.com, I think it is, that shows video footage of what happened on October 7th, and they have that disabled. We don't have access to that here in Israel. They're trying to do everything they can to prevent our children from seeing these things. So it's really hard to look at. It's hard for me as an Israeli to look at what our neighbors' kids are being taught and then see the compassion and that's given them towards the woke left world, global world, while demonizing Israel at the same time. It's just completely irrational. Okay, but back to topic. Okay, let's look at elastic energy. Who wants to learn about elastic energy? You guys like science? I do. I wasn't so good at physics though, but apparently this is another opportunity to talk about terrorism. So grade 8 again. Good gracious, these 8th graders. All right, elastic energy is taught in a science textbook through an example of a slingshot being used during a conflict. Students are asked to look at an image of a masked Palestinian pointing a slingshot during a flaming riot and answer specific questions on the energy transformations they witness in the image. The text further describes the properties of the rubber band in the slingshot. Okay, so we have a rubber band, or a spring, I guess it is, and then an arrow, and then an act of terrorism. Okay, 8th grade, science and life. They have the page numbers where you can find this and everything in the books. Okay, let's go to this one. Scroll to it. Okay, Islamic education. All right, this one I want to show you this tricky thing they're doing. All right, so this is grade 5, 5th graders for Islamic education. A textual reference accusing the Jews for desecrating the tombs of Muslim leaders and shoveling them away and removing them from the Muslims' cemeteries was altered in 2020, in the 2020 edition, replacing the words the Jews with the Zionist occupation. The following picture of a tomb believed to be of Muhammad's companion. I'm not going to try to say his name right now. Okay. Do you see what they're doing here? When they exchange the words the Jews with the Zionist occupation, that's because they're trying to promote this narrative that that anti-Zionism isn't anti-Semitism. That's the direction that they're moving with this. Because you hear this argument all the time. I don't agree with it. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And what they're showing here, or what they're doing here, is that they're trying to go in that direction so that they get the credibility of not being anti-Semitic, just anti-Zionist. Like, we're not anti-Semitic, we're just anti-Zionist. You hear that argument, right? That's what they're doing here. So it's really subtle and a little tricky, but it's not lost on me, and I don't think it's lost on you guys either. Okay, what else can we look at? Oh, the Cave of the Patriarchs in math. You guys want to do math in the Cave of the Patriarchs? I think that could potentially be fun if it was done differently. Okay. All right. This is grade 11. And it says, to teach linear equations, students are instructed to calculate the number of martyrs and wounded in the Cave of the Patriarchs massacre to solve the equation with one variable. Okay, so 11th grade. That would have been advanced math for me, maybe trigonometry for some people. Yeah, but they're calculating the numbers of martyrs and wounded as they, work out linear equations. Okay, page 34. Okay, our beautiful language. So this would be another Arabic course for grade 2, second graders. This is a poem showing a boy and a girl in uniform with a background of a path leading to Jerusalem. These young members of the Fatah youth movement commit themselves to conquer Haifa, Jaffa, and Jerusalem. Second graders. I think this is the poem here. Let's see. I am a lion cub. I am a flower. We gave our spirits to the revolution. Our grandfathers built houses for us in our free country. I am a lion cub. I am a flower. We carried the revolution's flame to Haifa, to Jaffa, to Al-Aqsa. Okay, it's a lot for a 7th grader. Okay. We have some maps here on page 35. And of course, this doesn't surprise me. I've seen these maps. Even going into places in East Jerusalem, I've seen maps that don't mention Israel. Like, I mean, they're out, like these are not surprising things, but this is what they're taught. They're taught that Israel doesn't exist at all, like that it's just an occupation that doesn't have a right to exist. So they're, everything that they do is coming from this foundation that Israel shouldn't, like the Israelis and the Jewish people shouldn't even be here because all this should just be Palestine. It's a very different starting point than what a lot of more maybe center left Americans and Europeans might understand. You're not starting at the same place. They're starting at a completely different place from you. Okay, let's look at this coloring that they did. I always like to color. I'm an architect. I have an architecture degree and an interior design degree. So I spent 9 years studying design, and I'm a big fan of coloring, and we do a lot of art in our family, and I'm really in favor of the kids coloring, just not this. Okay, let's look at what they're coloring. This is 5th grade. The students are instructed to color a Palestinian flag, seemingly dripping in blood against the backdrop of the Dome of the Rock, accompanied by a map of Palestine without Israel. Students are encouraged to protect Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, I've said that a few times, but I don't know if I've clarified what that is here. Al-Aqsa is the black dome on Temple Mount. That's actually considered more holy and more important than the Golden Dome, which is the Dome of the Rock. Okay, so they're encouraged to protect Al-Aqsa Mosque and told that a day will come when the Palestinian flag will rise over Jerusalem without differentiating between east and west over its mosque and churches. Okay, I think that's significant, over the churches. I'll get to that in just a second, though. Students are instructed to color a Palestinian flag raised above Al-Aqsa Mosque. Okay. So there it is, their flag dripping in blood. And this is grade 5. All right. Do I have any moms with 5th graders out there that would like for their children to be coloring a flag dripping with blood? Let me know what you think in the comments. Okay, so I want to continue on, though, when they talked about Muslims and Christians. They continue that concept in other places. This is grade 3. Okay, and this is national social upbringing, so a social studies class, okay? Third graders learned that Jerusalem is an Arab city holy to Muslims and Christians alone without learning about its historical connection to Jews or Judaism. One exercise in the photograph included a picture of a girl standing in front of a church and of a boy standing in front of a mosque, but there's no Jewish synagogue. So they're completely trying to erase the Jewish connection to Israel and Jerusalem specifically, and Temple Mount even more specifically. And one thing I want to say about this is that as I've lived here for 15 years, and I've really followed what has been happening in the Palestinian Christian community. And we have some really great Arab Christian friends in Jerusalem who are Israeli citizens. They love Israel. They love the Lord. And there are some Arab Christian congregations, churches that uphold the Abrahamic covenant. They're evangelical, and they believe that the covenants that God established with Abraham are for the Jewish people even today, and that they, support the right of their Jewish neighbors to be here. And there's one pastor in particular who even goes and shares his faith with Jews in synagogues, and he goes to Gaza and evangelizes. He's a very brave man. So we have a small community of Arab Christians who really are supportive of the Jewish people in Israel and the Messianic Jewish community. But there's also a large portion of them who prescribe to Palestinian liberation theology. And whether or not they believe all of the points of that teaching, it has seeped into the culture and to the churches. This is why you see things like the Nativity at the Christmas Lutheran Church in Bethlehem, that was Yeshua, Jesus, in the rubble, doing revisionist history with biblical text, revising that so that it's telling the Palestinian story rather than the story of the Bible. That's why that's happening. And in certain areas of this community, they would actually not renounce Hamas because in some cases they're unsafe. I'm going to be honest about that. Like, it would make them unsafe. But in other cases, they don't want to renounce Hamas, because in renouncing Hamas and being critical of Hamas, it's inadvertently showing some measure of support or validation for what Israel is doing. So we have a lot to overcome there. And I actually see what's happening in the textbooks here as the PA almost kind of like courting the Christian community. Does that make sense at all? You guys, what do you think about that? Can you see that as well? Let me know. Okay, it's okay if you disagree with me too. You can tell me why. Okay, let's look at page 39. Okay, this is another math problem. All right, 11th grade again. Advanced math or trigonometry. I'm not sure what they're doing. Okay, an 11th grade math problem that shows a Jewish settler shooting at passing Palestinian cars and used to teach statistics and probability. Wow, okay. One of the settlers fired at the cars passing by on one of the roads. If the probability of hitting the car with the first shot is 0.7 and the settler fired at 10 cars, what do you expect the number of vehicles hit to be? Oh, I forgot to turn that on for you. Okay, there it is. Okay, you see, grade 11, 11th grade, statistics and probability. That is just wild and sad and unnecessary. There's no reason that they should be talking about settlers firing at cars. I mean, this is like brainwashing, really. Like, this means that their entire school day is immersed in conflict. Their entire school day is immersed in us being enemies with one another. And from a young age, like, I think the earliest curriculum we've seen here is 2nd grade, right? Okay, so there's so much I could continue to show you. We could sit here all night long and I could just go through this. I mean, it's 103 pages and we are on page 39. Okay, so we could keep going, but I did want to show you this page 52 about 9/11. Okay, so they do start talking about America here. This is grade 12, high school seniors. Students are taught that the United States took advantage of 9/11 events to impose a hegemonic agenda to control the world and intervene in the countries of the world in order to spread its rule and hegemony over everyone. Negative anti-American imagery accompanies the text, while praising and giving examples of opposition to American hegemony in the world. Students are instructed to form fictitious court to trial the USA for its crimes in Iraq. Okay, so they're not given the option to be critical thinkers here. They are told that what America did was wrong, and now they have to try. They're creating a court, and they're going to try America in this court. I think that's one of the biggest problems too, is that they don't, they aren't given creative, like critical thinking skills. This is totally like cult. This is like cult brainwashing is what it is. This is like a cult. Okay. All right. Science, seventh grade. Okay. So seventh grade science, we're going to talk about human anatomy and the spine. All right. So in biology, the importance of the human spine is taught through a story of Zionist aggression, calling paralysis. Ali was absent from school as a result of an injury to his spine, which led to his paralysis. He played with a suspicious object, one of the remnants of the Zionist aggression. Which parts of Ali were damaged and why? What is the significance of the spinal cord to the body? What are the likely effects of spinal cord damage on the body? Okay. I mean, seriously. My dog's digging back there. Can you guys hear her? Can you see her? She's digging. Turn off the wrong thing. Okay, there we go. Okay, and there was something else I wanted to show here on page 76. Okay, Science and Life, grade 7. All right. Okay, this is about the pituitary gland. And you all know I've had pituitary surgery twice, right? So I don't know, this one just kind of hit me a little bit. Children study about their hormones and the functioning pituitary gland in biology through the example of a violent clash and a demonstration with the Israeli army, and are asked the following questions translated below. And here's the questions they're asked. What is the sudden situation that led to the panic of the children? What organ in the body was activated by that event? What endocrine gland operated? What is the name of the hormone that forwarded it to the gland? What effect does this hormone have on the heart? Okay, and that event was a violent clash with the Israeli army. Okay, just no business being in science here, none at all. Okay, they did also, this organization, they did also go through Israeli curriculum, and I don't want to go extensively into that because I just don't want to take up too much of your time, and I knew this was going to be a long video, and I wanted it to be a little bit more casual. I just wanted us to hang out and talk it through. But they did look at what was going on in Israel. And so I just wanted to show you in comparison, just a little snippet. And so you can see, I just have to make sure I'm opening the right one. Where is it? That one. Okay. Okay, so this is the Israeli textbook document. All right, if we go to, they were actually really happy with the Israeli curriculum. Our children are in a semi-private Israeli school. It's for the Messianic community, and they use the state curriculum and also introduce some Bible teaching that covers both the Old and New Testament. So it's a Messianic and Christian environment. The Christian volunteer community also sends their kids there. But they do use the state curriculum, and I've been actually very happy with it. I think it's been a really great curriculum, and my children are thriving, and they are great critical thinkers, and everything is going really well. So we have like actual experience with this curriculum, and so what I'm showing you is just like a really small portion of what I know to be true about what's taught here. And what's taught here is basically like the worldview of classic liberalism. They teach the way that information should be taught. They don't try to politicize it. And when they cover Israeli history, it's probably different than what you all get in America, but I think it's accurate. It's just standard good education, right? Okay, so the parts I wanted to show you though from here, they have, like when they start to study things like the War for Independence, for example, in 1948, this is an example of what shows up in the curriculum. I don't remember what grade this was, actually. I'm sorry. Grade 9. Okay. So ninth graders, they're learning about the War for Independence. And then as they study it, they have topics for thought and discussion. And so they have questions like, and this is Israeli again, what do you know about the results of the War of Independence? Number 2, was everyone who lived in the country, Jews and Arabs, content? Why or why not? And they just go through, and they definitely teach this as an attack on Israel that could have been avoided. I mean, this is very clear, but this is also very historical. They're not revising the history; they're telling it as it happened. But they're also encouraging the kids to think about what the experience would have been for the other people, and to process why the Arabs would have been unhappy about this, right? Also, I had page 185 noted. Okay, yeah, so this is just their conclusions on the Israeli curriculum. And they say, 3 overarching characteristics were apparent. One is that peacemaking and dialogue, as both a Jewish and universal aspiration, is taught as the ultimate way to resolve disputes. The second is that the curriculum presents multiple perspectives on contentious political and historical issues. And the third is Israeli students are challenged to confront previously unknown or negative aspects of organizations that form a part of national consciousness as instrumental in the creation of the state of Israel. So this organization was really happy with the way that Israeli curriculum was put together. And the main reason I just wanted to touch on that briefly is because I didn't want to show what was happening with the Palestinian Authority curriculum and then face the possibility of getting comments or whatnot, people saying, well, Israeli curriculum is just as biased, it's just from the other perspective. And that's just not true. Like, I know that as a mom of children in the Israeli school system, and you can read through that entire document. All the links are in the show notes. You can look at that for yourself. Okay, so this has been long. It's been a little bit more casual. It's late here. I just wanted to really walk through this with you all. I appreciate all of you who maybe stuck around to look at what was happening. And when I was kind of just thinking it through and praying about it, I was just like, Lord, usually I like to share Bible verses to go along with things. And this time I just felt like we needed to just close in prayer for the Arab children who are being indoctrinated. And so I'm just going to pray. So if you all would agree with me, I'm not going to pray long, but just to close this out. But Lord God, we just thank you. We thank you so much for your goodness and that you have brought us to where we are in history today, where we are in the world today. And we know that you are at work and that we can trust that and that you are sovereign over all things. And Lord God, we know that we have neighbors here that need desperately to be freed from this demonic ideology. And we have children, Lord, that are being told that they should grow up to be martyrs. And Lord God, we just ask that you would remove this evil from their lives so that they have a fighting chance at freedom. And we ask God that you would reveal Messiah Yeshua to them, and that in that process they also would catch your love in your heart for the nation Israel, Lord, and that they would come out of this demonic ideology and this cult-like teaching that's leading them on a path to death and encouraging them to give up their own lives for this false god, this demon. And we thank you, Lord, that you are at work and that you are bringing people to faith. And we just commit these little ones to you. And we ask, God, that we would even do everything that we can to continue to defund this organization and to see it just completely dismantled. And that as the son of Hamas says, that these people would just be liberated from Hamas and they would be given actual education, Lord. And we just thank you that we are all made in your image, and we ask, God, that you would just continue to work. Hashem Yeshua. Okay, well, thank you so much for watching and looking at this and seeing this lengthy video that I'm making. I hope you enjoyed my living room, my dog. Here she is, Kinamon, which means cinnamon. She answers to cinnamon sometimes too. Hey, Kina. Sleepy girl. All right. Well, thank you all so much for continuing to stand with Israel. For Zion's sake, do not keep silent.